Welcome to the next installment of Journey Through John. We're continuing on through John chapter 14 with the hopes of having some bite-sized conversations, a little bit of a challenge at the end, and the hopes that this can be a resource for you as you're going through your word or looking for a way to get into your word every day. Today we'll be going through verses 15 through 17, and Jesus has been talking to the disciples about these great works that they would be doing as well, but that also follows down to us, and there should be some great works going along in our lives as well as believers and as we gather together as the church and greater kingdom work. Verse 15 says this, because he's just building off the works. He says this: "If you love me, you will keep my commandments, and I will ask the Father, and he will give you another helper to be with you forever, even the Spirit of truth, whom the world cannot receive because it neither sees him nor knows him. You know him, for he dwells with you and will be in you." And this goes along with what we can see in 1 Corinthians 6:19, as Paul is speaking to the Corinthian church, and they've struggled with what they're doing, so to speak, with their body. And and Paul is speaking to them and saying that your body's a temple, so be careful with that. The idea, though, is that the Spirit of God now dwells in us. Now, I think this is interesting too. We show our love because we keep his commandments. His commandments are not, Jesus' commandments are not just simple morality, where we're just following rules, and if we live by enough of the rules, we're good enough to get in. I want to make sure we make that distinction, because really it's by grace we've been saved through faith, and not of works. And so that's what we see in Ephesians 2:8 and 9. And so as we see this, it's important for us to see that we will keep his commandments because of the great love that we have for him, because he first loved us and he showed us this great love. The next thing, though, I want to show is that the world does not understand the Spirit of God. He doesn't live within them. The Spirit of God becomes one with the believer, meaning he comes into our heart and, so to speak, at the point of salvation. And so when we see that happening, we see that when the Spirit of God lives within us, transformation takes place. We become something completely different than what we were before, not just moral, but transformed. I've used this analogy numerous times to the point of exhausting it, but I'll say it one more time here. The difference between being conformed, that means making yourself fit something, maybe morally, and transformed are two different things. And it talks about this, I believe, most clearly in Romans 12:1. The analogy is this: that if you take a mold of a starfish and you're at the beach and you stuff it full of sand, get a little water, and get it all the sand packed down in there, and you flip it over on a board and you tap it and you lift that mold off, what do you have? A lot of people would say a starfish. Like, no, you have sand in the shape of a starfish. That's what being conformed is. If you're to do the same method, but then you tap it and you lift it up and it is a starfish, an actual functional alive starfish, that's transformation. There's life where there was no life before. It has become something completely different. That's the difference between transformed and conformed. And so what I'm saying that for is because if the Spirit is truly within someone, if someone says they're a believer, we are transformed. We're alive where we weren't before. We can try to live morally, but if there's no Spirit of God, because we're not truly submitted to Jesus, we haven't really asked him to be our Savior, you can make yourself kind of look like a starfish. You can make yourself kind of look like a follower of Jesus, but there's no life. And so that's the problem. If we see there's actually transformation, there's evidence, there's life, there's works, there's things that back that up, and a lot of things that we see in James, it's not just that you're talking about works, you're actually doing the works that you're called to. You're not trying to just be moral, you're trying to just follow Jesus. What we see happening is that now there's something powerful that happens, and it's through this that we see those works that are even greater than what we see, as Jesus just said in the last section, greater than what Jesus did, because his Spirit's alive within us. Beyond that, the reason why I bring this up today is because the world doesn't have that Spirit. And so when they see us as believers, they see a life, they see alive. They don't see a sand in the shape of a starfish. They see something transformed into the starfish, if you will. They see something different. They see something that's nothing like us. And that's why it's so important for us to not just live a moral life and say, well, I think I'm a Christian. I lived a moral life and I kind of slapped the bumper sticker of Christianity on it. I had the t-shirt and I think that qualifies me. It's more than that. There's got to be a transformation that starts taking place. It may not be immediate, and as I've said before, it's okay to be where you are, but as a believer, it's not okay to stay where you are. If you're in the midst of a struggle, it's okay to be there. Don't stay there. Well, what do? Do what you do know to do. Get in your word and start to pray and let the Spirit of God lead you. Those are some of the challenges I think we see, because we have the Spirit of God. The world does not. Therefore, we should be transformed, not just conformed, not just morality. We're transformed. We look a little different. And if people could say in the past 6 months to a year that they've seen no change in who you are or difference in some of the things that you do, that's a challenge for us. So, are you being conformed or are you being transformed? That's really our challenge for the day, because the Spirit of God will transform you. I hope that challenges you, but I also hope it encourages you. And I look forward to seeing you again as we continue this journey through John.